Hello and welcome to the Game Boys. My name is Joe. Now the Game Boy Advance is probably one of my favourite handheld consoles ever, but there's only one problem with the old Game Boy Advance, and that is the screen. Whilst at its time it was one of the best consoles on the market, it doesn't hold up to today's standards of bright IPS screens. And here's an example of how dark that screen was at the time. So I've got quite bright white lights on it right now, and you can just barely see the screen. So my project for today is to mod this Game Boy Advance with a brand new IPS screen and give it a fresh new coat of paint to resemble the Nintendo Switch. So without further ado, let's get to it. So to start off, we'll turn off the Game Boy and remove the batteries so we can take it apart and see what we have inside. And also remember to take out the game. So to start off with the screws, we have 6 tri-wing screws here and 1 small Phillips head underneath the battery compartment. So you'll need a tri-wing screwdriver to take these screws out. Now with the kit I bought, it comes with both a tri-ring screwdriver and a small Phillips head screwdriver. So if you don't already have a screwdriver set, they come with this mod kit that I bought. And I will leave a link in the description below of where I bought this mod kit. Now next up, we need to remove these 2 screws from inside the case on the left and the right. And for little screws like this, I find it handy to have a little magnetic dish that I bought off of eBay for quite cheap, but it keeps everything in place. So then we take off the buttons, the side panels and the on-off switch. Now next up, we need to remove the ribbon cable, so we pull up these little posts and then simply pull out the ribbon cable very softly, and it should come out pretty easy. And there you have it. There is our circuit board for the Game Boy Advance. So now it is time to prep the shell for painting. So I've already put a little bit of painter's tape inside the speaker grill there, which will stop the paint from filling that up. So you can simply pull it away once you've finished painting, and the holes will all be nice and preserved for your console. Now, I do suggest using painter's tape instead of actual masking tape, as painter's tape is specially designed to not allow paint through, so it'll give you a much sharper line once you remove the tape than just regular masking tape would. So here I am masking out the line of where I want the paint to go, and here it is speeded up for you. But a very simple process. You just cover up where you don't want paint to hit, and I want to keep the middle of the shell black to resemble the Nintendo Switch, so I'm simply masking off the entirety of the middle piece of the Game Boy so that we can then prepare it for painting. So just one final piece round the middle and we're ready to paint. Now I have also mounted the side panels on little bits of sticky tack so we can stick them down and spray them nice and easily without worrying about getting into all the nooks and crannies. So now we are ready to paint. Now the trick with spray painting any plastic is plastic primer. I highly recommend you should get some plastic primer if you are looking to spray paint anything made of plastic, as this will give it a nice surface to stick to, and white will allow the colour to really pop once you have sprayed on the colour that you want. So make sure nice even coats, and make sure we hit the sides as well so that we have completely covered the parts that need paint in primer. And also once you have finished, always remember to clean your nozzle by turning the can upside down and spraying it until no paint is coming out, and you'll have a nice clean nozzle for the next time you use it.
2 hours later.
So 2 hours later, and now it is time for the first coat, and I went for blue first. And once again, thin layered coats. If you apply it too thickly, you'll end up losing detail in the small writing on the case. And once again, remember to clean your nozzle.
2 hours later.
And another 2 hours later, now is time for the red/orange. And again, thin coats. I applied this one a little too thick, unfortunately, but it turned out okay in the end.
2 hours later.
And then finally, after all your paint has dried, make sure to apply a clear varnish coat. I've gone with a matte varnish here to give it a nice clean finish and not allow the paint to rub off once you have it in your hands. So now the tape is all removed and it's fully dry. Here is the finished case, and I think it looks pretty darn good for a first attempt, and I'm pretty happy with it. So now to install the screen. Now the mod kit that I bought includes all of this with it: the screen, the sticky tape, the glass, lens as well. And first up, we need to install this sticky tape onto the case. Now I highly suggest you get this kit with the pre-cut out case, otherwise it's a huge ordeal to cut the case properly to allow the screen to fit, as the screen is slightly bigger than the original screen. So you will need to either have a pre-cut shell or cut it yourself in order to fit this mod. So once we have the sticky tape installed, it is time to install these little spacer bars. Now you have one for the bottom, and make sure these are as close to the edge as possible because there is a very thin line of error when installing the screen. So if these are not right up to the edge, you potentially will not be able to fit the screen inside, and we'll have to take it apart all over again, and that is not highly suggested, as this sticky tape is a kind of one and done deal. So then we insert the side post here, and once again make sure that is pushed up as far as possible to the edge. And there we go, that's all sorted. And now for the big moment, here is the IPS version 2 screen itself. So what we've got to do is remove this screen protector here and make sure your surfaces are completely clean, because you do not want to get anything on this lens. And then we should be able to pop it in to this little space that we've created. And as I say, it might be a little bit tight, but just make sure you push it in softly, trying not to damage the screen, and it should pop in nicely. So after a little bit of nudging it around, we finally have managed to get the screen in nice and safe and smudge free. So straight away I'm going to throw on the glass lens to make sure that we don't get any dirt or anything inside the screen for the rest of this build. Now make sure this is in the position that you want it to be, because once it's stuck down, it is not going anywhere. And disregard the smudges on the screen, as they're just from the screen protector and not the glass itself behind. So there we have it, that is the screen installed. And next up is the tricky bit. So now we come to the soldering of the circuit board. Now I am a complete novice when it comes to soldering. I've only had a soldering iron for maybe a couple of months, and I've been working on a couple of projects to try and get used to it. So all we're doing here is tinning the left, right and select button contacts on this circuit board to allow us to change the brightness of the screen once the mod is complete. So simply tin up the L, R and select contacts, and this kit will come with 3 wires. So what we do is we connect 1 wire each to the L, R and select contact. And that's a very bodged job there. My soldering skills, as I said, are not very good, but we managed to get there in the end. So here is the second one. That seems to be strong enough. And finally, here is the third wire soldered to the circuit board. And when giving them a little tug, they seem to stay put, so I think I've done an okay job. So back to the console itself, and now we have the circuit board prepped with the wires soldered to the contacts. We need to attach it to the screen. Now this bit is very important. Make sure you click this piece in before you stick anything else down, because if this piece becomes disconnected, then you will have no image on your screen whatsoever. So this is probably the most important part of the build when connecting your console back together. So make sure this is fully snapped in and you should hear an audible click. So once you've heard the click, you're good to go. So next up we need to secure the circuit to the back of the screen. And here is where the tape from installing the screen comes in handy, as you'll be able to cut off a little bit as I just did there. And then remove the backing tape, which will allow you to stick down the circuit board. And make sure it's nice and secure for later when you are closing up the console. So next up we need to connect the select button to the TP2 circuit. So here's a close-up. You need to tin this little contact point TP2 and then connect the select wire to it, just like that. So then you'll be able to change the brightness of the screen by holding select and pressing L or R respectively, whether you want the screen to be brighter or dimmer. And now we are on the home straight, so it is time to start putting back together our console. Now make sure whatever connector you have, either the 40 pin or 30 pin, whichever is required, is facing upwards, and you can then fold the connector that is not required underneath or stick it down onto the back of the screen depending. So in my case I'm using the 30 pin connector, so I'm folding the 40 pin underneath and making sure that the 30 pin is raised above. So now it is time to put the guts of the console back into the front case. So firstly put in all your front facing buttons, the D-pad, A, B and the start select buttons, and then install the motherboard into the console. And when installing the motherboard back into the console, make sure that the brightness wires are accessible, as these still need to be soldered into place. Now once the motherboard is back in place, it's time to insert the ribbon cable. So as reverse as what you did when you took the ribbon cable out, simply push the ribbon cable nicely into the slot and then push down the posts in order to secure the ribbon cable. So now we have to solder our wires for the brightness selection, and each of these wires will need to be soldered to the left contact of each L and R button. So as you can see here on both the left and right button, it is the left contact that you need to solder these wires to. And just a quick tip, make sure you know which wire is which, as I didn't, and now my R button turns the brightness down and my left turns the brightness up, but I'm not too bothered with that as I usually use the default brightness anyway. So before we tighten everything up and put it back together fully, let's just test it out and see if the screen is working. So we'll just reinstall the batteries, and then we just need to turn it on and see if the screen is working. So fingers crossed, and we have liftoff. There we go, the Game Boy screen, lovely bright IPS screen there. So all we have to do now is put it back together. So reinstall the on-off switch down there, place in the customized side panels that we spray painted earlier, and then reinstall the L and R buttons. And now all that's left to do is screw it back up. Now with this mod kit, the original screws from your original case will not work, but don't worry, it comes with fresh brand new screws to rebuild your brand new Game Boy Advance. And there we have it, this is the Game Boy Advance Nintendo Switch Edition. Now as this is the first Game Boy Advance project I have worked on, I am pretty pleased with how it's turned out. The IPS screen looks amazing, I love the colour scheme, and I've even managed to get the brightness selection working, even if it is a bit back to front. So there we have it, the Game Boy Advance Nintendo Switch Edition, and if you're looking to do a project like this yourself, I hope I've given you a few tips. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to the channel and comment down below on what you think of this first ever Game Boy mod on the Game Boys channel. Until next time, see you in the next video. Bye for now.